The fundamental principles that govern what we do. Law of expectation. What does this mean? What the mind expects to happen tends to be realized. Okay? What the mind expects, the mind directs. One of the primary functions of your unconscious mind, your nervous system, is to create the illusion of external reality that matches your internal one. So every time we make a change on the inside, it will be reflected or expressed somewhere on the outside. You as a hypnotist, a master of transformation, reality creation, engineering, whatever, at whatever skill set, at whatever skill level you have, at whatever resource level you have, your job is to manage expectation. Classic example of that in regards to imagination games. Right? If I know that I can prime somebody to be more hypersuggestible or to convince themselves that they're suggestible by using this hand clasp technique. Remember we talked about this, that this is actually a muscular trick, right? But as they watch that happen, the window opens and says, oh my God, maybe this is real. Now they're starting to expect things, right? Now when we go to this, which is the actual real phenomena, they're much more primed to do it. In that case, we've managed expectation. You've done this, right? If you have a clinic, you have an office, all right? A lot of people who have a waiting room, they have nice, pretty pictures on the walls. They have, maybe nice music playing in the background. You really want to take control of that. Put signed testimonials on your walls from people who've been successful. Put little albums of people saying how awesome you are, right? People be in the waiting room, they're waiting around looking for a magazine, they see this little book, and all of a sudden, you helped me so much, thank you for helping me lose 50 pounds. I've been a non-smoker for 6 months, I'm so grateful I came to see you. They're sitting in the waiting room reading this. What do you think happens? Oh my God, they really can help me, right? Manage the again, this is managing that level, that kind of engineering we do more in Killer Influence. But it's the same idea, clinically speaking. You have to manage the expectations, especially yours as a hypnotist. I'm sorry, what?
To not change, they would be able to report.
I didn't understand what you said.
If they read through all these testimonials and they don't change, they'll be able to report.
Well, again, you're bringing a lot of social principles, social hypnotic principles into it, because you have what we call commitment and consistency. You have affinity, which is everybody else, or what they call social proof. Social proof is the idea everybody else is doing this, I should do it too. Everybody else says this is good, it must be good, right? Very powerful hypnotic operator. Manages expectation, right? When I used to sell door-to-door insurance, before we went into an area, they would give us a list of all the people in that neighborhood who had the policy we were selling. And we would take their names and we would write it on a little flip file at the top of our on top of our insurance roll. And we would go to the door, and if they gave us a presentation, they say, I was just talking to so-and-so down the street, they have this, they have this, they have this, they have this. And all you needed to get was one person that they knew. Go, oh, John has this? Come on in. Right? Social proof. Right? Huh? Yeah. Yeah. W. Clement Stone built $1 billion insurance company doing that door to door. Right? You guys know who W. Clement Stone is? Right? He was the guy who actually supported Napoleon Hill. The guy who wrote Think and Grow Rich, who couldn't make any money on his own. Right? Okay? I was lucky enough to work for Combined Insurance. I was lucky enough to go to their sales school and graduate the top of the class. Yeah, baby. Yeah. Okay? So, expectation. And you know whose expectations you got to manage first? Yours. Your expectations are always, hypnosis is easy, I know it's going to work, they're going to do everything really well, we're going to rock it. Right? Law of expectation. I don't really, I'm going to just call this the law of latency, even though I don't actually know what the, I think it is in your book, I just don't remember what the actual term is. And this is the idea that the longer an idea is accepted and held, at the unconscious level, the harder it is to change. The harder it is to change. Notice I said harder, not impossible. That's why we're giving you regression technologies as early as possible, because that's where you're going to be able to clear a lot of stuff that's old. Yes? Okay. Okay. Law of compliance. When you go back through the videos, you'll see we covered these actually throughout the course of the training. Law of compliance. Each time you accept a suggestion, you become predisposed to accepting the next one. And the inverse is also true. Each time you give a suggestion and they refuse it, they become more predisposed to not accepting the next one. So if they refuse the first suggestion or they don't follow the first suggestion, you got to really sweeten the pot and make it easy on the second one. Right? Hairballs, sorry. Next one we talked about was the law of compounding. Law of compounding says, first time I give you a suggestion, it's weak. Second time I give you a suggestion, the second suggestion is weak. First suggestion gets stronger. Third suggestion is weak. Second suggestion gets stronger. First suggestion gets stronger. Ad infinitum, right? So the corollary of that, the tactic is never give one suggestion. Never give two suggestions. Give as many suggestions as you can. And it does not matter if it's all the same suggestion, where I'm just saying every day in every way you're getting better and better and better. Every day in every way you're getting better and better and better for 1,000 times. In old school hypnosis, it's called direct suggestion, direct drive hypnosis. And it works. It's just boring as fuck for the hypnotist. Right? Jerry Kine, what Jerry used to do when he did direct drive was he would say, in a moment I'm going to repeat I'm going to say give you your mind some powerful positive suggestions. I want you to scream them, shout them as loud and as strong as possibly as you can, quietly inside your mind. Right? And so he would start saying, every day in every way I'm becoming a non-smoker. I am a non-smoker. I will be a non-smoker for the rest of my life. And he would drone on for like 5 or 6 minutes. And then he would reach over and he'd turn on the tape recorder he had prepared that would continue giving the suggestions. He'd get up, go to the bathroom, get a cup of coffee, come back after 20 minutes. By that time, the guy is usually in the chair going, I am a non-smoker. I'll be a non-smoker for the rest of my... Right? But the idea is you have to get them mentally and emotionally engaged in that. Now, a lot of people ask about amnesia a lot of times. You'll probably know, now, when I'm guiding you through a process, like in the room, you guys just blank out, right? That's usually because I'm not having you do a whole lot, right? Anytime you have the client just there in the chair, not doing a lot except being receptive to suggestion, they will go into a amnesic state many times. They'll come, like especially on a direct drive technique, if you're just droning the same suggestion over and over and over and over again, at some point their conscious mind will just completely check out. Because they're not doing anything. The meat's not engaged. So they'll go, and they won't remember a lot, right? Does work, right? It does work. It's just not really exciting and it's not my style. But when in doubt, think of a handful of suggestions and just hammer it for 30 solid minutes. while they're in trance. Future pace them, have them make some movies of the future. Bring them out. You've got standard old school hypnosis. That's all they did. Put you in trance, deepen, deepen, deepen. Direct suggestion, direct suggestion, direct suggestion, direct suggestion. Make some mental movies about it. Rehearse it over and over and over again. Suggestions to do it outside of trance. Done, right? Not my style. If you want to play with that as a primary intervention, you're more than welcome to do it. But again, not what I do. But if you don't know anything, you don't have any idea what technique to use, just make up some powerful suggestions and repeat them over and over and over again. Yeah.
So the law of compliance with the law of compounding.
Mm-hmm.
They refuse the first suggestion and accept the second. Is that prime the first to be accepted?
It can. It can. The law of compounding and the law of suggestion really do go hand in hand, right? And you can see how.
Yeah.
You can overcome any resistance with enough repetition. Okay? It's just sometimes the amount of repetition necessary for that to take place is astronomical, especially if you haven't cleared up the resistance to the problems in the first place. Yeah?
I have a question. Does this happen? Is there, so like they refuse the first one and they accept the second. Does it ever happen when the first one gets even more refused?
I've never calibrated that, so I can't say yes or no.
Okay.
I've never asked about. I usually, because I'm not giving one suggestion at a time. I'm usually not giving one suggestion at a time. So I'm giving like multiple suggestions on multiple levels, so something's going in. That's why, Mark and I are kind of the same that way. We don't just give one. We're doing suggestions with what we do with our body. We're giving suggestions with what we do with our tonality. You guys can watch when I was doing heavy hand, light hand, right? When I was doing the heavy hand, I was heavier, heavier. I was changing my tonality. I was being very direct. I was sounding like what I was saying. That's another form of suggestion. Okay? The more you sound like what you're describing, the more engaged the neurology becomes. It's Theater 101. Okay? Theater 101. Law of fractionation. If I put you in trance, bring you out or almost completely out, and then I put you back in within a very short amount of time, each time you go in, you will go deeper. So if you go in, let's say this is a 0 to 10. First time I put you in, you get to about a 3. I bring you out of trance. I put you back in, you'll go to a 5. I bring you out of trance, I put you back in, you'll go to a 7. See how it works? And that's exactly what you're doing in the 4 magic bullets. When you're going, open your eyes, close your eyes, open your eyes, close your eyes, open your eyes, close your eyes. Each time those, everybody sit up in your chairs. All right? Close your eyes. Open your eyes. Close your eyes. Open your eyes. What do you notice when you open your eyes and close? What do you feel in your body when you open your eyes and close your eyes? You feel a little downward movement? Right? Especially if I hold my hands in front of you and go, open your eyes, close your eyes. Open your eyes, close. You feel up and down movement? That's a kinesthetic suggestion caused by the movement of your eyes. And it says, oh, I'm going down, I'm going up, I'm going down. And so each time you come up and out of it, you're engaging that fractionation phenomena. You come up, you go down. And you can do that any point at any point in any trance. Right? If you want to take them in, like if you're at Gray Room, you want to take them in a specific negativity, but you really just want to pile drive them through the floor, you just go, open your eyes, close your eyes, open your eyes, close your eyes, open your eyes, close your eyes. In a moment, I want you to notice there's a feeling you've been having, a feeling you want to change, a feeling that has everything to do with why you're here today, point to where you feel it, frame it. Anytime you want to just slam them deeper into trance, fractionate them. There are some inductions where you just instant induce, you go, open your eyes, close your eyes, open your eyes, close your eyes, open your eyes, close your eyes, for like 3 minutes. If you're like Steve Pickus, let me use you, Andrea. There was a course I co-taught with Steve Pickus many moons ago. It was an erotic hypnosis training. Have you seen it? The one I co-taught with Steve P? This is Steve Pickus's version of open your eyes, close your eyes. You ready? Sleep all the way up. Sleep all the way up. Sleep. And he's doing this to women during an erotic hypnosis training. The man is a psychopath, right? That's pretty radical, wasn't it? That's like, thank you. Give him a big round of applause. He took whiplash for you guys. First time I saw Steve do that, I was like, oh my God! I'm letting him teach with me. I'm going to jail. But Steve, for those of you who don't know who Steve Pickus is, a lot of you have heard of Ross Jeffries, a lot of you have heard of Mark Cunningham. They both learned from Steve Pickus. Steve P is very much one of the most crazy hypnotists on the planet. He's like a 65-year-old ex-biker. He walks around with a leather jacket with fringes, hair down to his back. And he's got the strongest frame control of anyone I've ever seen. He just walks into a room and everybody believes what he says, no matter how crazy it is. Right? He has that kind of a presence. But really actually a very smart, intelligent, but very, very radical dude. Right? And he is not cheap to get study with. So, but he and I are friends, if anybody can be friends with Steve. And he actually, when the very first time I taught erotic hypnosis in San Diego, I invited him to come teach, and he said yes. And so well, I was the nice one. I'm still kind of seeing in therapy for that weekend, but I learned a lot. I learned a lot about primal circuits in women, and just how hyper responsive women become when those circuits are activated in the right way. It's a little off the deep end, but Steve makes most of his... Steve, by the way, bills himself as a vagina mechanic. He created a system called White Tiger Tantra about, I guess, over 10 years ago now, and it was really a system that teaches women how to have ejaculatory orgasms. But a lot of it was specific massage techniques designed to break up adhesions in the vaginal wall, which actually helps them release. A lot of it is from a lot of the ladies like to use toys. It damages and creates muscle adhesions in the uterine walls over time, and it actually increases their inability to become anorgasmic or orgasmic. So you go in and you have to break up that stuff. Have you ever seen those fertility massages where people go in and they massage the womb and the uterus and things like that? It's very much along those lines, but he uses it for giving women ejaculatory orgasms. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, whitetigertantra.com. I think it's still out. But be prepared. He will test your state control. Where did my eraser go? Okay, let me see. What am I missing? Am I missing something? Law of expectation, law of latency, law of compliance, law of compounding, law of fractionation. We talked about Farzing a little bit yesterday, right? Farzing is the phenomena where if I say, don't buy my next training today, right? Your unconscious mind deletes the don't, and you go ahead and buy my next training today. Okay? Right. Did I leave any out? This means yes, this means no? Okay. So when you're creating suggestions, remember that you always want to create them in what we call present tense or present progressive, which means in present tense, I am a non-smoker. I'll be a non-smoker for the rest of my life. I now weigh a slim, trim 160 pounds, not since I came to Thailand, but that's present tense. Works very well. My preference is present progressive tense, which means instead of saying I am a non-smoker, is that I am becoming a non-smoker. I will continue to be a non-smoker for the rest of my life. So in one, I am already there. In the other one, I am in the process of becoming. Both are powerful. One is just much harder for the unconscious mind to find an incongruity or an inconsistency with. Right? So.
I have a
Yes.
You mention often the thing of reactance, that every time you suggest something, people are like predisposed to say no. So how to handle it?
They're not always predisposed to say no. It really depends on how it's asked. We covered reactance in depth last night. We covered the 3 types of resistance plus reactance plus the resistance removal formula. It's a specific conversational protocol designed to cause people to generate reasons for doing the things they said they didn't want to do. And once you have their reason for doing the thing they said they didn't want to do, then you can leverage that and get them to start taking actions based on that reason. Okay? So, a lot of the reactance can be removed by becoming what we call permissive and indirect. Most types of reactance and most types of resistance are going to happen when you give a direct suggestion. Close your eyes, relax your body until they just won't work. As opposed to, I'm wondering if you could just close your eyes and allow your body to relax if you want to. Right? And as you do that, maybe you can notice other things starting to relax as well. So it's very different. It's just as powerful in many cases. It's just how much resistance does it create. Technically speaking, based on the studies, there actually is no difference in the efficacy of direct suggestion versus indirect suggestion, with the exception that direct suggestions are more likely to be refused, depending on how they're stated. So the Ericksonian people out there, the people who like to get all vague and creepy and confusing, telling these weird stories and stuff like that, they're actually not any more effective than someone who's from the Elman school, where they're just going to tell you, close your eyes, go to sleep, and stop being a smoker. All right? Yeah. Question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Something more mundane, like let's go back to my place.
Let's go back to my place. Depends on their state. Depends on their state. With women especially, the higher the level of emotional arousal, actually this is with male or female, the higher the level of emotional arousal, the flimsier the reasoning can be. You know, a very infamous guy comes from the speed seduction lineage, and then he went out on his own. A friend of mine by the name of Swing Cat wrote Wheel Rolled Seduction. And I've gone to bars with this guy. I'm not a bar guy, but I would go to the bars just to watch him work. Right? I saw him go to Tijuana and game hookers and get freebies. Right? But the idea is, in his book, he talks about neurological arousal and why it's important. Remember that the more emotional arousal, and arousal can be fear, lust, anger, hunger, it does not matter. Any form of arousal in the neurology, the more intense the arousal, the faster the critical faculty checks out. Okay? Your neocortex, the rational lying brain, is designed to do exactly that. It's designed to generate a story to justify you acting on the feelings and emotions below the surface. So if you've got somebody, like, he's famous for getting women all aroused and turned on, and then asking them to come back to his apartment to look at his stamp collection. And they go. Right? Because what could happen? I'm just going to look at his stamp collection. For women, they need plausible deniability. They need plausible deniability. Something, I just had one too many drinks. Right? I would just went back to look at his stamp collection, and things just happened. Right? There's one story. You know, I don't know if you guys have ever been in LA, or if this happens where you guys live. You know the people who they're like little groups, and they go into a certain area and they have these big bags. Sometimes it's cologne, and they're just walking around selling things in a parking lot, or they come to your door selling magazines. Right? Well, one time, this attractive woman in LA came to Swing Cat's door selling magazines. He seduced her at the door and didn't even buy any magazines. I mean, he's just one of those guys that, and he's just a little Jewish guy. He's not like, he looks like Rico Suave. You ever seen, because he's satin shirts, right? Smart as a whip though, very, very smart. He just likes that stuff, right? He accepts that. He says, this is who I am, this is what I'm about, and I'm okay with it, right? A lot of people aren't. But the idea you have to remember is that all forms of emotional arousal are trance states. All forms of emotional arousal are trance states. Your conscious mind, your rational brain, the neocortex is the youngest part of you, and it has one job. Well, it has several jobs, but the one you need to realize that's most active in your hypnosis clients is it makes up stories. It makes up rationales to justify to itself and to the people around them acting on the feelings that it has, whether it's a primal drive or an emotional one. Okay? Remember we said yesterday there are 3 points of resistance: things that threaten our sense of self, things that threaten the way we think other people will see us, right? And then what we know to be true. The part that creates stories to protect those parts of ourselves is your neocortex, your rational conscious mind. But it's also the least informed, the last to know, and the weakest. It's the first one to check out when the emotional level hits too much. And if it's something that needs an action, it'll generate a story to allow you to do it. In the hypnosis world, we would call it trance logic, right? Trance logic. But it's really just creating a story to justify acting on what we want to do in the first place in a way that's acceptable to ourselves or acceptable to the people around us. Has nothing to do with why we're actually doing it. Okay? That's why I tell my hypnosis clients, 99% of the clients who come in your door are lying to you. They don't know what the problem is. They've created a rationale for why they are the way they are. But if that part, the part that created the rationale, could fix the problem, they wouldn't be in your chair. But you smile and you nod and you act compassionate and you pretend to believe them until you get to talk to the boss, which is the unconscious mind. And as, like you saw with Bill, like you saw with Hong, you find out where the shit really started. And then you fix it and everything's good. Right? But remember, the people who come to see you don't actually know why they are the way they are. But they sure as hell think they do. All right? And you can't alienate them from their unconscious mind. You have to, yeah.
People who work like this with the client, you need to allow a fair amount of time after the session for the client to come back to their fully conscious.
Well, I don't let them out of the room. I don't let them out of the clinic until they're back to, they're completely out of trance as far as being functional and not going to walk into traffic or something like that. Well, they're going to be processing for a week or more after the session. And I usually tell them, I said, look, you may notice after the session emotions and feelings come up. That's okay. Let them. That's just the body shedding. So the processes are fast, the processing goes on. Right? And you have to let them know about that, because if feelings come up after the session, the first thing they're going to try and do is stuff it down. They're going to try and argue with it. They're going to try and deny it or do what they've been doing for 20 years instead of letting it come up and out. And that's why you hear me keep saying, as it comes up, it comes out. As you feel it, you reveal it. As you reveal it, you heal it. Right? The energy has to leave the body, and a lot of times we have the feelings we had when it happened, but as you let it happen and you let it process out, it's gone. It's when you try to stuff it down, you try to distract yourself, you try to do everything but let yourself feel it fully, that you prolong it, or you actually make it worse. Yeah. Remember, for every unit of energy you try to keep locked in the body, you need an equal or greater amount of energy to keep it there. And if you're constantly accumulating more emotional shit and you're adding more and more emotional energy to keep it there, what do you think? You only have a finite capacity before these things transition into physical masses or neuroses or whatever. Right? You know? So, again, that's why I'm okay with abreactive work. Because if they're abreacting, they're venting. If they're venting, they're healing. They may need to do more than just vent, but I know when that reaction subsides, they're closer to being stable than before. Now, if you leave them hanging in the middle of a fucking reaction, well, that's not the point. The point is you have to be there through that whole process, right? And guide them and let them know, okay, this is what's going to happen and that's going to happen. And the more knowledge you demonstrate about what they're experiencing before they're experiencing it, man, the more they follow you, right? The more they follow you. That's one of the reasons why I make you be the client, right? Dealing with real stuff. Because you understand this world now better than they do, from both sides of the chair. So when you talk about what's going on, you know, because you've been there, right? That's a big deal for people. People need to know that you know what you're doing, right? Even if it's not pretty, they need to know that they can rely on you to be unflappable. Yes?
Do you guide with it? In the middle of the night they start crying or shouting or whatever, just go for it?
I tell them to. What I tell them specifically is when a feeling comes up, vent it. And I give examples. One lady that went to see one of my mentors for a lifetime of sexual abuse, after her session, she checked into a hotel room, slept for 18 hours. Says if you want to, if you need to break dishes, find go buy some cheap dishes, lock yourself in a closet and break the hell out of the dishes. Just do it in a way and a time and a place that's safe and appropriate and doesn't, and I don't want to read any stories about you on top of a post office with an M16, right? I make jokes like that, but I put it across to them that vent these emotions safely but appropriately, and do it in a way that allows you to completely vent the emotions, right? You've got to use the word appropriately to the context and safely, right? Because they may take that as, if they're a little off, they may take that as permission to go slug the guy down the street. That's not what it's about, right? But you got to give them permission and tell them, this is what you need to do to heal. You need to vent that feeling, right? If you need to lock yourself in a closet and scream into a pillow for an hour, do it. It's your closet, it's your pillow, right? Just give them examples. They can be funny examples, but they get it, right? You can deliver these things with a sense of humor, even though they're very serious. Never lose your playfulness in the process. That doesn't mean you're not compassionate. It doesn't mean that, you're making light of their situation. But it's also the understanding that there's nothing here we can't fix, right? Don't take yourself too seriously, because that's one of the people. That's one of the reasons why the person's in the chair in the first place. They've taken themselves way too seriously. Right? Seriousness is the kiss of death. Seriously. Right? You will always be more resourceful in a playful state than you will in a serious state. So, for the sake of your client, you owe it to yourself to be at your best. Right? So those are the laws of mental dynamics. I'm trying to think if there's any other laws we need to cover. There is a phenomenon that's similar to the law of compounding with post-hypnotics. When you give somebody a post-hypnotic suggestion, which is a suggestion for them to do something once they've formally emerged from trance, each and every time you activate that post-hypnotic, it can have a similar effect. It's weak the first time you do it. You activate it the second time, it gets stronger. You activate it the third time, it gets stronger. So NLP likes to call post-hypnotic suggestions anchors, right? But it's the same phenomenon. So remember, when you're doing post-hypnotic suggestions, you want to rehearse them a lot in trance. Set it to a keyword or a stimulus, bring them out, activate it a few times, just to get the ball rolling and really, and especially the first few times they're doing it, you want to lavish praise on them. You want to say, great job, awesome work, feel good. Why? Because the behavior that gets rewarded gets repeated, right? Stimulus response. Unconscious mind wants to please. Remember, the unconscious mind is the seat of your long-term memory. It's the seat of your imagination. It houses the protective mind, right? In my book that I gave you, I make a distinction between the subconscious and the unconscious. And most people use them indistinguishably. In my world, the subconscious is the seat of your emotions. It's the realm of your long-term memories. The unconscious mind is the part that runs the meat. Keeps your heart beating, keeps your lungs breathing, controls your blink rate, right? They're not mutually exclusive, but we do segment it that way just for clarity.
Unconscious lizard brain.
Yeah. Or the limbic system, really. Yeah.
So Neil Strauss wrote his book, The Game.
Mhm.
He was talking about when you approach a woman, you don't want to go up to her and say, "Hey, how you doing? My name is," and because then she's going to automatically be off. Right? So instead, a better way to approach would be to say, "Can I get your opinion on something? I got this friend and his girlfriend," and then a girl is like, "Oh, okay, this guy wants to hear." So you're kind of tricking them into, and then you can tell a story which could be completely fictitious, but he invokes certain emotions within the female, within the person you're speaking with.
Yep.
Is there a law at work there? Is there a name for that? Like,
Well, what he's doing is called an opinion opener.
a what?
An opinion opener.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, opinion opener.
All right. And the law is actually just, it's not a law per se. He's using metaphor. In your section on conversational hypnosis under state management, you'll see two major questions there. Have you ever question, and I believe the other one is what's it like when?
Yeah.
Right? It's in your manuals.
Okay.
And that what you do with that is you name a state, and then you describe it. Like, have you ever met somebody and for just some mysterious reason you two just clicked? It's like you were born, like you were separated at birth, but there was some connection between you that you just instantly felt. And even though you only met this person like in the moment, it felt like you knew them for your entire life, and it felt just so right to spend time with them. Has that ever happened to you? Right? So what did I do? I named the state, I named the condition that I wanted you to do a transderivational search for. I described it, which caused you all to start visualizing it. Right? And then I asked, has that ever happened to you? So I named it, I described either a generic experience or my personal experience. It causes you to play a movie in your head. Then I ask you, has that ever happened to you? And it connects what I just described to your personal experience, and the emotions get locked in it. Yes?
I can tell you a personal story that is kind of recent. I've been to UK several times, and then I noticed that this street pickup thing is a big thing in UK. Yeah.
It's been there for 20 years.
No, but I mean, and it was like a crazy thing. A guy came to me and he said, "You are very beautiful, but you don't have a wedding ring. You cannot be totally crazy." And then I said, "Yeah, I am totally crazy."
I agree.
And then he says, "Are you kidding me?" I said, No, I'm as crazy as you can be and still live in society without an assistant.
I would have said, I'm on parole. Want to have coffee?
Yeah, and then he said, okay, well, let's just grab a drink. And then he shaking my hand, and his hand was very rough. It had opposite effects, so it was very hard to remove my hand. So I mean, things that were meant to be positive, they had opposite effects.
Yeah, because they don't have calibration, they don't really understand what they're doing. Right? The difference between having external game and internal game. Right? If you don't have the inner game, it doesn't matter what you do with the external game. It's going to be incongruent. It's going to be out of sync. Okay? But we digress. This is not a pickup class. But what Neil is doing many times with his stories is he's building up social status in the background. Like, if you've ever listened to him talk about his story, when he's traveling with his buddy in Europe. Actually, I think this is a Swing Cat story, but I think they share stories. He's driving with his friend in their Maserati, right? And they're driving, and they see a limo broken down on the side of the road. And they pull over, and it's Bono. Right? Right? But the whole idea is, at no point is he the star of the story. Right? But because he's telling the story about his friend and Bono and all these things, that star power gets linked to him, and his social status in the eyes of the woman goes up. It's indirect. If I go and say, hey, I know Bono, it's like, yeah, fuck you. Right? But my friend was driving along the road in his Ferrari. I was with him. It was cool. And we stopped by and there's Bono. Right? And then you see how it's the difference. It's in the background. Right? It's periliminal. Right? So the protagonist is often a distraction. Right? So the things that are presupposed. His friend has a Maserati, therefore his friend must be rich. Therefore, the implication is he knows rich people. Maybe he's rich too. See the string of associations? That's how it works. And in NLP and conversational hypnosis terms, we call those presuppositions. As you get deeper and deeper into the conversational hypnosis stuff, you'll start to think in You already think in presuppositions, but you learn to think strategically in presuppositions. The things that'll come out of your mouth, you already know what you're presupposing when you say it. And so you can just seamlessly guide people in ways that are just almost unfair. Right? And you only get there from actually speaking in presuppositions and understanding them. Right? You got to do it a lot.
You've got to read some books on it too, and then go practice.
Start with CPI. CPI is the fastest, most direct way to get good. Right? You can spend years studying things like, the patterns 1 and 2, frogs in the print. I mean, all of Igor's stuff just sends you the wrong direction. Right? Where did my eraser go again? Thank you. All right, so those are the laws of mental dynamics. That's Farzing. We've talked a little bit about arousal and why it's important. We talked about the rational mind, the neocortex. We talked about the conscious, subconscious mind. Remember, the conscious mind is the seat of your willpower. It's the seat of your short-term memory. It's the home of a behavior known as the critical faculty, which is the aperture, the gate that controls what suggestions go in, what suggestions go out. In hypnosis, the technical definition of hypnosis, not the functional one I gave you at the beginning of the training, the technical definition in the Jerry Kind school is the bypass of the critical faculty of the conscious mind and the establishment of acceptable selective thinking. Now, if you stop for a moment and think about that definition, is there anything that you encounter that doesn't do that? Movies do that? Do they bypass your critical faculty? Do they set up an environment in your mind that's different, that's what the producer or the director or the station wants you to have? Do books do that? Right? If you think about that definition, does advertising do that? Absolutely. Do attractive people do that? Say yes. Right? Do unattractive people do that? Say yes. Right? There isn't much that does not have the capacity to bypass your critical faculty and direct your thoughts in a certain way. Religions are stock in trade doing that. Okay? By telling you about the glories of heaven and the fires of hell. Right? They get that limbic system going, the critical faculty checks out, and you become hypersuggestible. Right? So your critical faculty is actually a good thing in certain contexts. It's designed to keep you from changing too fast. That's one of its primary purposes. If you didn't have a critical faculty, anything you were told would go right in and have as much validity as the first thing you were ever told. You'd be buffeted by suggestion left and right. But the critical faculty has a setting on it. It only lets in what's already there. It only lets in what's already there. So if somebody comes up to me and says, David is a flaming butthead, the critical faculty goes, let me check. Guido, yeah, is David a flaming butthead? Oh yeah, he's a dick. Go on in. Right? Right? If my critical faculty meets a suggestion that says, David is the sexiest man in the world and Brad Pitt is jealous. Yo, Guido, We got Brad Pitt wannabe out here. Is that true? I don't know. Let me check. Nah, he's a dick. Get out of here. That's what your that's what your critical faculty does. It takes information, checks to see what's there. If it finds a match, it lets the information in. If it doesn't find one, it kicks it out. Unless they come in with a battering ram. Repetition, 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 repetition. Right? You as a hypnotist, all you're doing is you're walking up to the bouncer and say, hey, why don't you go get some pizza? Right? You go, you change the files around, put new files in. Guido comes back, you bring me a slice? No, all right, I'll see you later. Guy comes, next suggestion comes in. David is the Messiah. Let me check. Oh, hell no, he's still a dick. Get him out of here. Right? But the point is, the critical faculty has an important job. And we don't vilify that. But its job is only to let in what's already there. And if what got there first isn't helping you, then we need to send the critical faculty out for pizza with 4 simple steps. Go in, change the files, and then when the bouncer comes back, it does its job like it's always done, but now it lets only different information in. Information that wasn't there before. And it kicks other things out. That's old school hypnosis, and it's still true enough to be true. Right? We have many different ways that we can change those files. But at the end of the day, you have to bypass the critical faculty. And that's why I say hypnosis is any process that takes them from the state they're in to a more useful state, to another state. Right? Bypassing the critical faculty is ridiculously easy. It's easier than the authorities want you to believe. Because as long as you believe it's hard, you think you're safe. You understand that? There is a secret government. Edward Bernays wrote about it. You guys know who Edward Bernays is? He was Sigmund Freud's nephew. He's also the founder and father of public relations and propaganda.
What's his name?
Edward Bernays. B-E-R-N-A-I-S-E. Huh? Okay. The secret government is the media. It's not the U.S. government. It's not the Russian government. It's the media. They run the planet. Because they tell you what to think. They tell you what to believe. They tell you what's true and what's not. It's your media. That's why there's such a close relationship between governments and media. Okay? Edward Bernays is responsible for giving millions of women cancer. You know how he did it? He convinced them to start smoking. You know how he did that? He convinced them that by adopting the smoking, that the cigarette was a surrogate penis, and that by smoking, you could be the women could be at the same power level as a man. Millions of women all over the world began smoking right after World War II. It was him. There's other ones. You can buy some books about him. But not my favorite guy. But then again, some of the people that are most powerful aren't our favorites, are they? Doesn't mean we can't learn from them. Right? So, last thing we're going to do before we start on terms of reviewing theory. You guys remember the 6 laws, 6 dynamics of the unconscious mind? Heather, what's the first one? Always answers first. Excellent. Have you found that to be true?
Yeah.
Always answers honestly. Very good, Derek.
Make it up.
Let me write. And squeak.
Feel like you make it up. Make it up.
Always feels like you're making it up? What's the other one? What's number 4? Huh?
It's never loud. I don't remember if you're number 1. It's never loud.
It's never loud.
Urge to edit what just came up.
What?
Urge to edit.
You always have an urge to edit what just came up. Last one. Derek's reading his notes. It's never linear. Have you found these to be true or not true? Experientially. Right? Again, don't just believe me. Learn by experience. Right? These are things you can rely on. And especially when you're dealing with clients, if you tell them this ahead of time, your credibility goes way up the minute they experience any one of those 6 things while in trance. Right? There's 3 steps, or three elements in every instant induction. What's element number 1? William? Relaxation for an instant induction? Do you need relaxation for an instant induction? Huh? And train them? Okay. Buffy? What's the first, what's one of 3 elements of an instant or rapid induction?
One is like shuffling, right?
That's a type of induction. You guys sat around blasting people into trance. That's right. Sudden loss of equilibrium. Either mental or physical. In my world, it's usually both. What's the second one? Jolly. What's the second principle of an instant or rapid induction? Didn't expect a pop quiz, did you?
Always keep talking.
Huh? That's number 3. Direct command. Direct command, usually sleep. And then 3, just keep talking. Okay? True or false? Imagination games are hypnotic inductions. That's good. Okay. Learn more than you thought, huh? What is the phenomena that links the mind and the body? I'm sorry? Somatic. Okay, that's actually technically true. Not the one I'm looking for, though. Vivification is acting out the change work you want to do. We did mention it. We just didn't emphasize it as much. What's the phenomena that connects the mind, the psyche, and the soma? Breath. Breath. Okay. But getting back to what is the somatic address? What's the somatic address? Kevin, what's the somatic address?
Where you feel something.
where you feel something. Somatic bridge is what, Mark?
Bridge is taking it out.
Close. Peter, what's somatic bridge? Okay. Mark, what's a somatic bridge? Larry?
Finding the space where it is, relating it to...
That's right. You're connecting interoreception and exteroreception, right? Point to where you feel it, reach out and touch it. Any kind of internal and external connection is a somatic bridge as long as it's using the body, right?
So you're connecting what? You're connecting the emotion with something external?
You're connecting the entire internal holographic component with the external holographic component and creating multiple routes to the same information. So by activating the body, remember that the eyes and the hands take up more areas of the brain, right? Just using the right and left hands activates the right and left hemispheres. Looking at it creates a visual construct. So there's all kinds of neural circuits that you're activating. You're connecting the external and the internal. You're connecting the subjective and the objective. The parts of your brain that act out the change are changing both emotionally and physically. Because remember, we talked about external warmth, emotional warmth, right? Physical warmth, emotional warmth, same areas of the brain. So as we work all of these different areas, we're getting more and more and more of the neurology engaged in the process. We're bringing more resources to bear on the situation, which is why creates more energetic amplitude in the body that pushes the change through. That's why it happens so fast. Okay? Somatic bridge. What's the somatic search engine concept? Who can tell me what the somatic search engine is? And why it's important?
It gets them to think or put themselves in that place or in that emotion.
Okay. It can be used to deepen and create and deepen absorption in the process. But what is the primary thing we need to understand about the somatic search engine and why it's important?
Finding the issue.
Finding the issue, okay. Anything else? Zach?
It's where information is located.
It's where the information is located. What kind of information? Huh?
You start with the color.
Well, you start with the color. That's translation of information. Remember, when you work with any piece of information, you are working with a hologram that has billions and billions of bits of information in it. It's too much for you to focus on. So you only get what you ask for. It doesn't mean the other information isn't there. The more information you ask for, as Larry implied, the more absorbed in the process and the more of that hologram you access. Right? Most of the time you only need a color, but you can also go weight, temperature, texture, size, shape, in your body, out of your body. You can, any attribute you can think of, you can ask about, and the unconscious mind will generate an answer. The act of generating that answer deepens the trance state. And each of those attributes is a letter in the code the neurology uses to run your system. So when you look at the color, the direction, the weight, each of these things has meaning and instruction to the neurology. Changing the code changes what the neurology does with it. Okay? The somatic search engine allows you to extract more information and deepen absorption in the process. Okay? What is utilization? What is that?
Use their words, their actions.
Utilization means whatever happens in the session, you use it. You build it in as it's supposed to happen, it's a part of the program, and you tell them what it means and what's going to happen next. Wrecking ball comes crashing through, and as you feel your internal blocks being blasted away and hear the sounds of change all around you, you can feel confident knowing that your brain is changing for the better. We paste it, we acknowledged it, we tell them what's happening, we tell them what it means, and what's going to happen next. And nothing ever flaps us. Nothing ever ruffles our feathers. You know, in the middle of the session, they can get up, set their dick on fire, and wave it around, as George Carlin used to say. We expected that. And as you put your dick out and sit back down, you can continue to go deeper into trance because you know it's the right thing to do. Right? George Carlin said the coolest stuff that I find useful is teaching materials, right? But I make a vocal, but that's really how it has to be. There are people, there are clients who love to try and shock the therapist. And the minute you show that they've shocked you, you've lost. It's a frame war. You understand? Nothing they do flaps you. Okay? That's what.
Have you found that that's quite common in past?
You'll get people who are borderline, people who are.
Borderline personalities.
Yeah, people who are very attention-seeking. They are the ones most prone to it, right? Some narcissistic behaviors, they'll have that attention-seeking behavior, right? They're not out to prove they're not out to get fixed. They're out to prove you can't fix them, and that they can shock you and expose and create a feeling in you where, oh, you poor baby, or you know, it's not, you know. So you have to be aware of that kind of behavior, right? They'll go off on tangents like all over the place. But there's no way for me to prepare you for every single possibility, right? Just to know that no matter what happens, stick to the utilization principle. Stick to your state control, right? Acknowledge it, pace it, tell them what it means, and what happens next, right? Somebody was shocked when, I think it was Johnny was trying to put Derek into trance and he burst out laughing, right? And he'd never had that experience before, right? That's a very common one, by the way. You start putting someone in a trance, they'll start laughing. It's a release of tension, a defense mechanism, and if you don't realize what's going on and you don't practice utilization, it'll break your state and they won't go into trance. But if you actually say, oh, and as you laugh, laughing is a relaxation of tension, that means you're going deeper into trance, and as you go deeper into trance, you can laugh until you're done laughing and go deeper. Whatever comes out, you use it. Whatever comes out, you use it, right? Let's see. What is resourcing? You guys remember we talked about this? There were 3 types of resourcing. We've practiced 1 or 2. Huh? Safe place is a resource. One of the most powerful ones, by the way, in terms of therapeutic as well as get out of jail free card. If people start to abreact, all you have to do is have them breathe their safe energy through it, or go to their safe place. Abreaction's over. Right? But that's not the standard approach. You have to say, and the scene fades and you attend to your breathing. But you'll find when people start having a really strong emotional response as they unpack things, well, just go ahead and breathe your safe energy through there and notice what happens. Right? That's why I gave it to you. The other way to do it is to create what we call a dissociation anchor. Dissociation anchor is where, and you saw me demonstrate dissociation with May, where I brought her up, I had put her hand on the table, right? And I had her imagine that the hand on the table wasn't her hand anymore. It was just a hand. It was just a piece of meat. And her real hand was up there on the ceiling, and I had her up there looking at her hand on the ceiling, waving at her, flipping her off, doing whatever. And I'm down here, you know, twisting the skin on her fingers, or on the back of her hand like a freaking throttle on a motorcycle. And she's like, right? And she enjoyed it so much, she didn't come back. She stayed dissociated. Every time I tried to get her, she said, you're very cute when you're in trance, by the way, man. Right? But my point is that you can actually set those kinds of things up in advance, and the way you do it in NLP is if you imagine standing in place, and you could step out of your body and look at yourself, and you can imagine stepping out of this body and looking at yourself, and then you step out of this body and you imagine yourself looking at yourself, looking at whatever it is that you're dealing with. You have infinite levels of dissociation. The more times you dissociate, the more removed you become from the intensity of the issue.
So is that used a resource?
Depending on how it's used. It's a very common mental phenomena. Everybody in here dissociates in certain contexts and associates in others. Dissociates means you're watching yourself. Associates means you've seen it through your own eyes, like a first-person perspective. Okay? NLP, unfortunately, and this is one of my big criticisms with NLP, NLP tends to associate dissociation with resolution. In other words, if I can dissociate you from the trauma of an accident so that you don't feel the trauma anymore, it's cured, functionally. That's not resolution, right? That's like saying if half my house is burning down and I build a wall between my half and the half of the house that's burning down, that the rest of my house isn't burning down anymore, right? That shit's going to come out somewhere. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow. It's going to come out, right? So I always go for resolution. But as a resource, as something to practice, because it's not about dissociation being bad, it's about doing it when it's appropriate. There are times when being dissociated is a massive plus. All good fighters, by the way, when they do time distortion, automatically dissociate. They go into a dissociative state. Right? In fact, I taught this at my last martial arts seminar. I taught people how to do time distortion for martial arts without having to take 30 years to do it, which is what usually happens. You're in the martial arts 30, 40 years, and maybe you learn how to do it. But all great martial arts athletes, all great athletes of any kind, really, they automatically do time distortion, right? So we installed it, right? So it's useful. If it's a resource, we want to have like a Batman utility belt, right? I need to flip my dissociation button, boom. Now I can function without being overwhelmed by emotions. But there are times when I actually kind of want to be overwhelmed by emotions. Oh, like when we're making love, right? Not a good time to be on the other side of the room going, man, my butt's fat, right? Right? Some of you guys actually may find dissociation useful for endurance reasons, but you know, okay, but right, but the so the important thing to remember, A, is that you should be practicing how to be associated and how to be dissociated. You should practice them both to get good at one, so you have a choice. The other thing is you always set up your resources before the session, before you begin actually not before the session, in the session before the induction, or as part of the induction, right? I actually set up their safe place many times, or a version of it, in their consultation. One of the substitutes you can use for safety is pleasure. If you have somebody who's never had an experience of feeling completely safe, and they can remember a time when they felt the strongest pleasure ever, you can use that to dissolve a lot of shit. And once you have them working with pleasure, you can imagine you can have them add in a feeling of safety to it. So you can actually mix, like mixing paints to create a better shade. If you can name it and you can describe it, you can create it, right? But these things need to be done at the beginning of the session, right? Safe place, dissociation, whatever resources you're going to do. I think there was one other resource we talked about. Oh, identification versus disidentification, right? This is where, again, if you think about the picture that we used, right? When the picture's out here, we're disidentified from it. When the picture passes the boundaries of our body, we become identified. So if you can teach people how to move it out of them, somatic bridge, and I've actually done the inverse of this with people who are chronically dissociated. I have them reach out and touch the picture and they don't feel a lot. I literally have them grab the picture and slam it into their body, grab it and pull it out, slam it into their body, grab it and pull it out, and after about 5 or 6 passes, they feel a lot of shit. Right? There's a video on YouTube where I did this to a lady in Orlando. I'm teaching, and I'm going through the framing exercise. The lady goes, I'm not feeling a whole lot. And right away I knew what was going on. I said, "Are you sure you want to?" And she goes, "Yeah." I said, "Okay." I said, "Grab it, slam it in, grab it." She burst out crying. She had no idea that that would just... And nobody taught me that, by the way. I was in session with a woman, I think it was a woman, and she wasn't feeling a whole lot, and I was frustrated, and I said, "Grab that thing, slam it in, pull it back out, slam it in, pull it back out." And all of a sudden she's completely back connected to her emotions again. The only way I figured that out was I got into a situation where nothing I did worked. So I got creative, or just pissed off, I'm not sure which. Right? And now that works a good port. Nothing works all the time. And anybody who tells you that is trying to sell you something. Right? But we got a really high percentage. Nothing works on everybody. Everything works on somebody. Yes?
Use that for discussion. Hypnosis and stuff like that.
I've never tried it. I've never tried it on a cutter. Usually what's going on with cutters is there's just so much stress and so much helplessness. Just regress to cause. Seriously, just regress to cause. Fix the shit there. And then work on the auxiliary behaviors. Yeah.
Before you had mentioned about you can take a wonderful memory from their past and then incorporate that into whatever their fear or anxiety might be and help resolve that, right? But do you ever have a problem with now corrupting that beautiful memory if you use it too much?
I don't take one memory and move it into another.
Okay. Well, there's the emotion from that.
I take the emotion and I generate a resource based on that emotion, and I use that as my foundation. So if I have a picture that makes them feel amazing, I say, notice there's a color connected to that feeling. What's the color? Take that color, move it through here. Notice what happens. I didn't move the memory, right? I didn't move the memory. But a lot of times, you can pull that off. Because remember, everything human beings do is a metaphor. Like, I was working with Derek. Was it Derek? No, it was Johnny. Johnny had this big black triangle, or pyramid, in his back. Some stuff he was clearing. And so, I didn't do exactly what I'm about to describe, but I'm going to use his metaphor because it was useful. As we were going through the change work process, and he was breathing his new colors through the area, the pyramid turned crystal clear. It was like a big crystal, right? Many times, you can take one shape that they create and use it to dissolve another shape. So I could have taken that crystal pyramid, moved it through the black pyramid, and dissolved it. A lot of times when some people were, I think it was you were pulling, you had pulling like a dagger or something, right? You could say if there was something if there were a tool or something that would dissolve that dagger, what would it be? And they might come up with might be a blowtorch. Go ahead and blowtorch that dagger and notice what happens. A lot of times you just turn it into a color and move it through the color. But you'll find a lot of times that these things take on an actual recognizable shape. Sometimes it's a hammer, sometimes it's a dagger, a spear tip. A lot of times it's some odd geometry. That's very common, at least the stuff I've come across. But you will get like common household items that were just in the environment at the time or are symbolic of the event. And literally it's like there's a dagger in his energy body right here. And as he resolves the energy from the emotional body, the dagger comes out. Right? The entire human neurology is metaphoric. But those metaphors are holographic containers for vibrationally encoded information. Okay, that sounds complicated, right? It's just a shape that has stuff in it, so fix it. I went Trump on you. Just a shape that has stuff in it. But I did not invent the internet. Anyway. So that's resourcing, identification versus disidentification. I'm going to show you, depending on how much time we have to play, I'm going to show you some other cool identification-based stuff today. but I wanted to review because you guys wanted to review stuff. These are the foundations of what you learned.